As a woman, I will tell you that I had to work a lot harder than the men to just get a seat at the table. I realized that I need to be super knowledgeable, so they have no choice but to listen to me.
You were kind of just hustling, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, right. You end up in hospital. So
I became an expert in ignoring every signal that my body sent.
what was the scenario, I guess, when you looked at your own behavior and you thought, hey, maybe, I'm the problem here? Welcome to Outwork With. I'm your host, Anna Merchant. What do you do when the very thing that got you to the top starts working against you? My guest today spent years building a reputation for being a total powerhouse, resilient and relentlessly capable. And then her body decided it had enough, and she ended up in hospital. She came out on the other side and wrote a manual. She is a trailblazing woman who rose through the ranks of Amazon to director level and is now the VP of Customer Experience for Europe and Middle East at DoorDash. She is also the author of the book Toxic Resilience, one of the most honest books written about what success really costs. Please welcome my guest, Zertashia Awan. This episode is brought to you by S.I.G.N.S, a nicotine brand built differently. High quality, consciously formulated products for adults who don't compromise. Find them at www.1nlabs.com. Please note, nicotine is a highly addictive substance and is for adult consumers only. Welcome, Zertashia, to Outwork With. I'm so happy that we're doing this in person. So I know I met you downstairs and I was like, I feel like I'm meeting like a celebrity.
I think it's the other way around, Anna.
No, because we've been talking for years and you've become like my unofficial mentor. And then literally I was like, do we need to do this in person? So thank you so much.
Very glad to be here.
But before we get into all the things I want to talk about, I want to start with, if there was one thing that you could tell us about yourself that would surprise a lot of people about you, what would that be?
I don't know if it's too much of a surprise, but I am the world's most hopeless introvert.
Yeah.
So that's one of the probably, and it's getting worse as I get older. But the reason it would surprise everyone is that if you see me at work or if you see me in action, then you would definitely think I'm an extrovert. And I was also very curious about that. And then I found out that introverts are extroverts on things that they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the surprise element would come from.
I would say that because we would look at your CV and it's like director here and VP there and mentor here. And so if I Googled you, you've got a lot of titles. So, you're a senior leader in a corporate firm, you're an author, you're a thought leader. But if I'm to look at a photo of 10-year-old Zertashia, what would I see? Like, who was that kid growing up in Scotland at that time you were?
That's right. Yeah. I think a 10-year-old Zertashia, and it's interesting how you don't personally see yourself in all of the titles, and the job you somewhere are more connected to that 10-year-old. So it's very interesting you say that. A 10-year-old Zertashia would be a people pleaser, definitely, trying to navigate the world in a way that probably children don't, in that my childhood was full of questions and life didn't make sense to me, from culture to religion to politics to the economy. I had too many questions for a child my age, and my mom would get a bit sick and tired of me. Sometimes she would try to answer. I'm sure it was hard for her because there was no Google back then as well. And sometimes she would just say, can you just sometimes accept things just the way they are? And so that would be a 10-year-old me, not very confident about myself, never really thinking that I would have a high ambition or aspiration, but definitely somebody who's trying to understand the world. And in many ways, the confidence is now there and the people-pleasing I worked on and all the rest of it. But the trying to understand the world, I'm still pretty much doing that.
I think that's a journey for life, though, isn't it?
Yes.
It just changes as the decades change.
Yeah, but my level of curiosity can be a curse as well. Yeah.
Your poor mum.
Yeah.
Do you think some of it or any of it had to do with how much you moved around as a kid? Because I know we spoke earlier. You lived in, 4 countries?
Yes. There was a lot of moving around, but I think that I took it in a stride. The moving around actually helped me answer more questions because I could then have reference points and comparisons and broader perspectives. That I think was a good thing in the scheme of things.
What did you think that it did to like yourself as a child, your sense of self? Do you and I feel like this as a British Asian, right? Do you ever feel like you belong to any of these places that you lived in?
That's a very deep question. And I know we're both probably in that same boat of identity crisis, right?
Well, I mean, it is, right? Because, you live in the Middle East now, but then you lived in Scotland, and then you also moved to, was it Canada? Was one of them?
Yeah.
And there was another one as well.
No, just to Dubai now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as in, which place, where are you from, right? Like it's a very nuanced question, but it's like, where do you identify as being from?
Yeah, it's like, okay, your ethnicity is Pakistani, then you have this passport, then you have this birthplace, then you're living here. I think there was a time when I was not sure where I belonged. I think living in the UK confuses you even more. Because your identity becomes British or Scottish, but then you all of a sudden maybe have a small racist incident here or there that all of us have experienced in one way, like microaggressions.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you have an identity now. You consider yourself British. And all of a sudden that microaggression, that small moment of racism takes you back to existential questions of where do I belong?
Yeah.
And so I went through that period where I thought, okay, my ethnicity is Pakistani, so maybe that's where I belong. And maybe that's ultimately home because there I'm part of who everybody else is, and here I'm not. So I definitely went through those moments as well. But all said and done, if you ask, then Scotland is home.
Yeah.
And over time, I've become very clear on that.
Yeah.
That it's about what you choose is where you belong, right? And belonging is also not an entitlement. Like your ethnicity shouldn't be your belonging. Where you're brought up shouldn't be your belonging. It should be the place that kind of took you in with open arms and made you feel like you were part of them. So if you go into that depth, then nowhere else have I felt that I belong more than in Scotland.
Oh, and it's the people, right? And it's your
environment.
It's the people.
Absolutely.
Do you have any like memories, or is there any particular point, like microaggression, that stands out?
Do you know there are a few, but it's interesting you ask. I remember once I was working from home. It was many, many years ago, and when I'm working from home or when I'm at home, I'm not in a good shape. And this was well before video calling days and all of that. So I was literally probably got up, had a shower, and just sat down and started working. And I had a small break in between, and I went to the post office to do something. And wasn't
this was in the UK.
This was in Glasgow, yeah. And so I went to the post office, and I think I had to do some transaction or something, but it wasn't as simple as just posting something. So I went over to the counter and I said to the lady, I said, could you help me? And she said, she kind of really slowed down and she got into a very patronizing tone and she said, here's the form. Now look at this form. You go there and you stand there. Do you understand me? And you fill out this form. And once it's filled out, you come back to me, okay? And I thought to myself, why is she talking to me like that? And then I realized that just because I'm not well put together, she's immediately seen me as a foreign person who is probably just new to the country and a total drag on them, doesn't understand the language. So it was a small thing, right? And now I laugh about it. But at that time, it impacted me quite strongly. And my family sometimes jokes about it. I now leave home, like I make sure my hair is done properly and I'm looking decent because I sometimes feel that people won't take me seriously or would just dismiss me. And it's very interesting, Anna, how it shapes your identity in many ways. There was another time where I was in Milan and we were in a kind of a store just browsing, and it was like I was wearing decent clothes this time and everything was fine. And this security guard kept following me. And my friend was with me who was white. But we split up and she was doing her own thing and I was doing my own thing. And the security guard kept following me. And the minute my white friend came and stood next to me, he walked away because now it was safe. Now there was a white person validation there. And again, these are all unsaid moments. Nobody called me a bad word. No, but I feel that those implicit moments of racism hurt even more. They sting even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, there have been many, to be honest.
It's almost like with us, and that's happened to me because I used to travel so much. I would always be randomly selected because my maiden name is Rashid. So it's very like, pops up on all the screens at Heathrow and stuff. So when I'd be traveling, whether it's with my white friends, my Asian friends and stuff, my name would always pop up and I would be randomly selected to be randomly searched.
That always happens.
Because of my name. And whereas everybody else with different surnames would just be going past because, and I kind of just got used to it. I was like, well, I'm going to get selected. So you guys go ahead, I'll see you on the plane.
Right.
So, but it's sad that we almost accept that.
Yeah.
And it just becomes part of the fabric.
Uh-huh.
But I guess you live obviously in the Middle East, which is very different. And I think anyone that I hear that lives in Dubai, they sing praises. Like I'm yet to hear someone say something negative about Dubai. But do you find that sense of belonging in Dubai? Because you've been there, 15 years?
No, 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah. Okay. Dubai has been on a journey. It's like the Dubai 8 years ago to the Dubai now is very different and it's progressing every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing about Dubai is that you're seeing a society trying to move from A to B.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it play out in real life. So that's fascinating. There's a sense of belonging. Definitely, the country cares about you a lot and it's very good at showing that it cares. So it's a different operating model. It's a different governing model. But as a country, I would still say that I belong to Scotland.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a bit about your parents because we've spoken about them when you were on the show before. But maybe we're starting with your dad. So your dad passed away when you were really young. You were 5.
Yes, I was 5.
How much of that do you think shaped a sense of who you are? Because as you know, my dad passed away almost 7 years ago, but I was in my mid-20s. So I got a chunk of my life with him.
Right.
And even I remember when he passed away, I just felt like there was something completely missing. And it changed me a lot, in my mid-age. I would say I was almost 30 by then. How did that affect you when you look back? Obviously, you were 5. You were very young. But
yeah, I think I was too small to know a father's love. So I don't miss that because I didn't experience it. So for a very long time, in a bizarre way, I didn't feel that something was missing. And the fact that my mom doubled down on being the parent and my aunt and the whole family, this is good thing about our cultures is that everybody comes together.
Yeah. It really is a village. Right?
And funny story, one of my aunts, my mom's sister, she never got married, and she's kind of our aunt who takes care of, spoils her nieces and nephews.
Yeah. The cool aunt,
right, but she's also a very fierce personality and a lot of determination. So my dad died and she came to me, and of course I was too small to know anything. And she came to me and she said, "You don't have to worry. I'm your dad from now onwards." And she was saying it in a symbolic way. She said, "I'm here. I'm your dad. You don't have to feel that you don't have a dad." So anyway, that week of my dad passing and the next week I went to school and I went to my teacher and everybody was being a bit nice to me because my dad just passed away. And I just announced loudly, I was like, "Nobody needs to worry about me. I have another dad." So mom came to pick me up. The teacher did say, she said, "Oh, we heard that you've already remarried." And I was incredulous. She was like, "What stories has this actually been telling you?" And they're like, "Well, she told us that she has now got a new dad." And it was like, okay, that was my aunt. So that family system helped a lot to work through that. But I learned about my dad through other people. And a lot of people now tell me that I'm very much like him, which is a weird but a pleasant surprise. Apparently, I get my superior sense of humor from him. But I think one of the stories that inspired me the most was something that my older brother told me, and he was lucky enough to spend a decent amount of time with my dad. And he told me my dad was born in a remote village in Pakistan, and there was no gas, there was no electricity, and so he had no prospects. He somehow managed to get some basic schooling and then joined his older brother who was in the army. And he always noticed that when his brother came back from the army, everybody, people would be treating him like royalty, and he would be making the big decisions in the village and all of that. So he saw quite a lot of respect that was given to him. And he decided that he would go into the military as well. So he did as in some sort of a junior position. And when he got to the military headquarters, he realized that his brother wasn't the important one at all. There were other people who were making decisions. Everybody was saluting to them. So he asked, who are these people? And they said, well, these are officers. And he said, what's an officer? And they were like, well, these are the higher ranked people. They make the decisions. They run the unit. They drive the whole thing. And my dad said, how do you become an officer? And everybody laughed at him like, you're asking, well, this is not a question for you to ask. And you're talking like more than 50 years ago as well. But he kept asking. And ultimately, there was another officer who said, you know what? I've never seen anybody like you become an officer, but if you're this desperate, I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to train you, and I'll give you my coursework and all of that, which he didn't need anymore. So he gave that coursework to him, and my dad kept studying, and eventually passed his exam and became an officer.
Amazing.
And that changed the trajectory of our life. Like the opportunities that me and my siblings had access to, my older cousins couldn't even dream of that. And, all because of one question: how do you become an officer? And I have seen that story repeat in my life many times, where asking the right question is the key to really getting the answer. You may not get it the first time, you may not get it the second time, but keep asking. And that way you don't have an entitlement, right? He didn't say, I want to become an officer or make me an officer. He said, how do you become one?
What can I do?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good framing of asking a question as well. But anytime I'm in doubt and I think maybe this is too big a question for me to ask, I just think about him and realize how big it was for him to ask that.
Yeah.
And I just go, it gives me a sense of courage whenever I need it.
But it's such an incredible blueprint of like resilience, right? Like your resilience started way before, you even went into the corporate world.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that story. We've spoken about it before. And then, of course, your mum as well is another success story from poverty to getting you guys in a different trajectory in your life. So you said that she wasn't educated initially, and then she would borrow books from her cousins to study and was self-taught.
Yeah, she went to school. But when she finished high school, her dad said, I don't have money to send you to college anymore or university. So
and she was also from a similar village, right?
Similar village, very similar, very basic backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so she had no choice but to accept that. It was like 6 siblings, and the boys were going to go to college, but the girls weren't. And she spoke to her cousin, her older cousin, and he said, okay, I'll give you my books. He was a year ahead of her. And you can just read my books and then sit the exam. There was a way to sit the exam privately, even if you weren't part of the formal university. So yeah, she studied. And if you spoke to her and you looked at her knowledge and even the way she spoke in English and her vocabulary, although it wasn't her first language, didn't study English till I think high school. So the amount of self-teaching that she did and how passionate she was about developing herself and how much of that she instilled in us as well was phenomenal.
That was going to be my next question. Watching your mum and your dad's work ethic and hardship, what do you think that did with your own relationship with effort and ambition?
I get 2 things that my parents I'm very grateful for. One is that, there's one side where they came from a difficult upbringing, and then they made something of their life. But the second part that I don't talk about often is that both of them were a foundation for their entire extended family as well. Like if you look at my mom's siblings, all the ones that came after her, my dad's siblings, all the ones that came after him, he looked after everybody. He was a rock for his family, and he was a huge support system. So that human side, that empathy side, blend that with ambition, and in my opinion, you have the perfect formula.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing. I was too young to know work integrity or work ethic or work integrity from my dad, but I saw it in my mom every day. She was a school teacher, then she was a principal at a school, and how hard she worked. And she was also very smart. She had great judgment. So even people more senior than her in her industry would come to her for her advice and for her counsel. So she was very wise. I think I learned all of that from her. I don't think I'm as wise as her, but I think what I'm more proud of, more than learning ambition and resilience, I'm more proud of the human side. And if I can have an ounce of what they had, I think I'd be very lucky.
Oh, it's amazing. And kind of going back to your father's career and asking the questions in the room, or maybe asking like the wrong question in the room. Have you had experience of that throughout your career? Because in a nutshell, you started off as a customer service associate.
That's right. Yes.
So actually, let me backtrack. Can you give us a quick snapshot of your career for those that don't know? So you started off as a customer service associate, and now you're a vice president at a massive company. What happened in between? Very high level.
Yeah, well, and before then, as all of us have worked at, I worked at a pharmacy here in Kensington High Street for 2 years when I was studying, and so many different jobs. But then I was doing my MBA and also working in a contact center to just pay my bills, essentially. And as I was finishing my MBA, there was a trainee manager program that was going to start there. So I thought, this is a great idea. Let me just stay here and try this out, and did that. And when people talk about my career, they think that I had a clear idea of where I was going to go.
Your trajectory seems like that, right?
Seems like so straightforward, but it wasn't at all. I had no idea, I think. And in hindsight, I'm so glad that I had no idea, because you can get too fixated on a certain thing and then you don't allow life to do its magic. You have to just be open to, today I'm going to do my best work. And I'm going to do it so well that people can't take their eyes off me. It's going to be that good. And tomorrow I'm going to come in and repeat. And the day after. And I think if you keep doing that, then opportunities start to arise. People start to appear in your life who are going to be foundational to your development and your progression. And if I could look at every step up that I took, it was all chance. None of it was pre-planned and thought through. But again, those questions are super, super important. And at the same time, I also learned, so there's an element where you work hard and you keep going and life creates its path. But then there's also an element of you looking at the bigger picture and understanding where you do need to ask the question. And so I had that as well, where I remember once I was doing a job for so long and I was overdue a promotion. And when the promotion time came and went, I wasn't promoted. And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't promoted because I didn't ask for it. And my boss was just too busy. They meant nothing bad. They just were too busy, so they didn't think about it. And when I went and asked for it, it became very easy to get promoted. So again, those questions and asking the right questions is super important as well as you go through your career.
And it's a very impressive career journey, as I said to you before. But at some point in that journey, all the resilience that you built, the hard work, the grit, the hustle, it all seemed to start kind of fraying at the edges, right? And that's where, we get the premise of the book. But can you take me back to that time or that season in your life where, you were kind of just hustling and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, right. You end up in hospital. So talk us through that time.
I think I've been working super hard all my life. That's just how I'm made. And you go through different things in life, and whichever way your belief system kind of shapes up. And so I've always worked very, very hard. And then when you see the hard work leading you somewhere, then there's more of a reason to work hard. But I think as far back as I can go, I think I have been. But I just kept going, and I became an expert in ignoring every signal that my body sent. Tiredness, okay, just keep working through it. I used to be a person who used to sleep 9 hours every night. I loved my sleep. I would go to bed at 9 p.m. even when I was at uni. I didn't go out to party. I would go to sleep. My sleep was the most important. And then all of a sudden I became this person who was living on 4 hours and just getting through. And your body cries and screams and tells you, no, but you keep ignoring it, then it stops telling you. until it comes
It
back
shows
with a
you.
vengeance,
Yeah.
right? So I think I just trained my body. Even now, I have a thing where I never feel tired because my body, even after all of my recovery from burnout and everything, my body still has forgotten or decided not to give me that signal because that's how many times I ignored it.
Wow.
So I could be exceptionally tired, but if you ask me, are you tired? I will tell you I'm not.
Yes.
Because I just kept going. I found that reserve within me and I used it to the max. And a reserve is a reserve for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? So I just kept using it and abusing it and ultimately got to a point I did not know that I was doing it. I did not even realize that I was abusing my body. I just felt that my body is an unlimited resource and it's going to be fine. It's just going to be fine. Just keep going until that time. And the thing about burnout is it's the poverty of the English language that we don't have good words for things. So stress and depression become the same thing when they're not. Exhaustion and burnout become the same thing when they're not. Exhaustion is so different from burnout. Burnout is like a psychological and physiological state where your body can literally shut down. And that's what happened to me, you know? And the perfectionist in me still cringes when I think about that day in that room with a lot of senior leaders who were the decision makers and how basic the question was that they asked me. I had some signs from the night before. I knew I wasn't feeling well. I knew that was the first time that I could just, my subconscious was telling me that I'm not okay. I was exceptionally exhausted that week as well. And then all of a sudden in this room, which I talk about in my book, but in a room full of people, my most critical project, and not just the critical project, my reputation as somebody who knew her stuff, who understood things, my years and years that it takes to build that reputation. And all of a sudden somebody asks me a very basic question and I don't have an answer to that. And then I try and just say random stuff that came out of my mouth in a desperate attempt to access that part of my brain that had the answer. And the question, for context, it was so simple, like, why did the cost of something increase from this quarter to the next? That's my bread and butter. That was the business I was running. And I couldn't answer the question. And they walked away from that conversation thinking that I did not know what I was talking about. So that still hurts. But that was the moment where I thought, I can't do this anymore. I need to, my body seems like swimming through cement is the term I use in my book. But it like thinking felt like swimming through cement. And so then I headed to the hospital where after many, many, many tests, because I thought there was something more seriously wrong with me. I was about to have a stroke or something. So it wasn't that, but it was serious burnout that I had to then.
From when I read in your book, it still took you time to accept, right, that you were burnt out. Like I think there's a scene in the book so powerful that you're sitting in your therapist's room and you've got like a stack of self-help books that you've gone through and you're like, right, how do I fix this? So you were still not, it was almost like you hadn't accepted that you'd burnt out and you were like, there must be a quick fix.
Right.
How long did it take you to actually accept, right, okay, stop? Because I don't think the hospital was just, that was just the start of you like, no, is this really happening?
Actually, I actually walked out of the hospital quite annoyed at the doctor that she couldn't just give me a fix. Like, what are the medicines I need to take? There must be a vitamin deficiency or something like that. Like, let's fix this. Because the way you've operated all your life is you have a problem, you put some thinking or resource into it and you solve that problem. You're asking too much of me. In fact, that was one hospital incident. I had another one where I had to go through a procedure, medical procedure, and the choice, the anesthetist came to me and said, we can give you a spinal or we can give you a general anesthetic. And I said, how long will I be unconscious for with a general anesthetic? And he said, about 3 to 4 hours. And my response was, I don't have time to be unconscious for 3 to 4 hours.
Oh my God.
And the anesthetist is looking at me. He doesn't know how to answer. And I wasn't joking. I genuinely did not have time to be unconscious for 3 to 4 hours.
Oh my God.
So that's your kind of way of thinking. And that's how urgent everything around your life is. And that's how many, balls are in the air. And so So it took me, to answer your question, I think about 3 months to read and know that there isn't a quick
So you just
solution
need
to
to
this,
stop.
but maybe another 3 months to finally accept it and
Mhm.
start the process of recovery,
Yeah.
which took its own, I think, a year to 2 years if
Yeah.
I look at the overall spectrum of it. And it wasn't easy because it wasn't, it was a lot of internal work that you had to do,
And
understanding.
it's almost like changing how you've always operated,
That's
right?
right.
And just
Yes.
accepting that actually this is not going to work now. And you almost feel angry at yourself because you're like, why can't I just carry on?
That's right.
I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, 1N. If you use oral nicotine products, you'll know that most of what's out there doesn't feel like it was made with you in mind. 1N is different. It was built specifically for people like the guests on this show, founders, creatives, operators, professionals, people who are intentional about what they put into their bodies and the products that they choose. Their products are consciously formulated using pharmaceutical-grade nicotine and tested in UK labs, so you know exactly what you're getting. No shortcuts, no compromises. If that sounds like something worth exploring, head to www.onenlabs.com. And if you're in London, you can also get their hard and soft tabs delivered in under 2 hours via GoPuff. Follow 1N on Instagram too for upcoming events and discount codes. Important note, nicotine is a highly addictive substance and these products are for adult consumers aged 18 and over only. At what point in that 3 months to 2 year period did you realize that actually this is something that's happened to me and actually I can help people to go, who are going through this, and I can maybe write something or put some information out there? When did the idea of the book crop up?
Yes. So I think whenever I learned something, because my mom was a school teacher, I have this teaching thing in me.
Yeah.
So whenever I learned something interesting, I always have a desire to share it with others. And as I was learning, it was so fascinating. So
Yeah.
I kept thinking, okay, I need to tell my friend this, or I need to tell my colleague this. And so that started brewing very early on in the process because the research was just so eye-opening. And I bought a lot of burnout books, and none of it was in those burnout books.
Yeah.
So, and those burnout books were written by very amazing people, but they'd never done the job themselves that was, or never been through that journey. So I think their theory was good, but I couldn't relate to it or
Didn't have
understand
lived
it.
experience.
They didn't have the lived experience. So I think it was not long into me starting to, I wrote the book for myself first because I thought all that I'm learning, I need to document it so that I can keep referencing it. And then when I came back to it, I thought there's a lot in there that everybody can benefit from. So yeah, it was an evolution.
Yeah.
Although I will say I thought writing a book would be so easy, and it's not.
I mean, you're quite an avid writer, right? On LinkedIn, and you do articles and stuff. But from what I've heard from authors as well, it's quite a difficult process. It's not almost like you write it, a couple of drafts, and that's done.
Yeah.
As in, I've spoken to authors who've like rewritten the book once they've written it. So how did you find the process before we go into obviously what's in the book?
I did that many times as well. And because the thing is that you can have a million thoughts and you can put them together very neatly, but how does it flow? And to have content from A to Z where it keeps the reader's attention, it's relevant. Sometimes you want to explain something in great depth when you don't really need to, and sometimes you don't, and so vice versa. So it was just back and forth, and I had a very busy work schedule, so I had dedicated Saturdays and Sundays to writing the book.
Yeah.
And many Saturdays and Sundays, I would just sit there and think, okay, I need to just call it off. I'm not going to be able to write it. Like that feeling of helplessness came out so many times. But you just kind of keep going, and ultimately it just comes together somehow.
Well, so coming on to the book, so your book's called Toxic Resilience, right?
Yes.
And it seems like I'm really fascinated where you got the title from, because it almost seemed like two words that contradict each other. So how did that title come about?
It was one of the, the 3 months of me trying to figure this out. The first 3 months where I kept blaming myself constantly. And that inner voice kept saying, you're not resilient enough. You're not resilient enough. Look at this person. Look at that person. Nobody else is crying. Nobody else is exhausted. Why are you so exhausted? By the way, it didn't take me long to understand that everybody is exhausted. And, some people are in denial, or some people have a different way to recover. But there was a moment I was in my office in Dubai, but I don't know what led to that moment where I thought, this is not resilience, this is toxic resilience. It's killing me. It's impacting me so much in some of the frameworks that I talk about there as well, where you actually see physically it's shortening your lifespan.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, when you're dealing with all of it in the name of resilience and never listening to your body. So I think the name came to my mind, and the name has been an anchor for me through writing the book. Even in the toughest moments, I just always had the name. I'd imagined the book in my mind already. I'd created the identity for that book. So in a weird way, you know, because there could be a way that you write the book and then you decide what the name is. But I don't know if I would have written it if I didn't have the name.
Yeah. That makes sense. And actually going into the frameworks, one of the frameworks you write about is S.I.G.N.S, which I found very fascinating. Can you walk us through that framework?
Yes. So S.I.G.N.S framework is something, the reference you were making of me sitting in my therapist's office. And I was like, there were signs and I didn't realize at the time. Then I was like, I need to create some language or a quick understandability around it. And this is the theme that I've had throughout the book, where people are already burnt out and they don't want to read yet another book that burns them out as well. So when I was writing, I held myself to the bar that it shouldn't feel like a drag reading the book. And the S.I.G.N.S framework was also, if I give you something that you have to write down and then find the notebook or you're not going to remember it. So S.I.G.N.S made it a lot easier. So it's S.I.G.N.S. So S is for sleep disturbances. I is for irritability and emotional issues. G is for gut-related issues. N is for numbing behaviors. And the last S is for social disconnection. And so these are the 5 things that happen to you when you're burning out.
Which of them do you think was the worst for you? Because obviously you would have had all of these and you talk about them in the book at different stages. But was there any that was really bad, that got really bad for you?
I think there's some that you can handle, like sleep. You can take a sleeping medication. You wake up feeling unwell, but you've had the hours, so you tell yourself it's okay. I think social disconnection for me, from somebody who got so much joy out of friends and people around me and family and interactions. For a few years, I don't think my friends got used to the fact that I wasn't going to reply to their text messages. Like I ghosted my loved ones just because I did not have the energy, emotional energy. And my brother says this to me even now sometimes, because, by the way, even if you recover, you still have some of those symptoms that keep going. My brother says, I never understand how hard it is to reply to a text message. And why don't you reply? But when you're depleted, you're also emotionally depleted. And trust me, it takes some emotion to even reply to a text message. Or even, sometimes I wouldn't even read a text message.
Just because it's just too much, too overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I start to get towards that now, when I start to see myself socially disconnecting, that's my red light now. And again, I've put a framework there of green, amber, and red light, but everybody will have their own framework that they will develop over time. Like, what is the one, to your point, that's a real warning signal for me?
Yeah, because everyone will have an individual kind of, preference of like, okay, I can maybe compromise on this, but these are like my hard lines that I
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Definitely. So, and actually that goes on really well when you talk about healthy perfectionism and adaptive perfectionism, because we were just talking before about how do you know when enough is enough and you just keep going and keep going. How did you even come up with those concepts when, you say yourself, you just kept going and it's so difficult to tell the difference.
Right.
So how would you explain those 2 frameworks? And then also, how do you know the difference between them?
Yeah, I think it's adaptive in a way that you just kind of, you adapt the situation to the level of perfectionism you're going to bring to the table. But it evolves as you learn. And the old version of me that still sometimes comes through, but the old version of me would want everything to be perfect. And the more you do it, the more you convince yourself that that is the only standard.
Yeah.
Then you want that standard from a lot of people around you. And so that becomes a dangerous cycle, because you've got a large team and your team is now trying to live up to your impossible standards as well. So I think the concept of adaptive perfectionism, more than anything, is about deciding what in your life is okay for 80% okay. There will be some moments in life where you have to give it 100%, but just sitting down with things and going through them to say, okay, well, this week I'm not going to reread these emails that I'm writing 5 times. I'm just going to send it. Maybe I'll read them twice.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, and what needs 80%, what needs 90%? And what I did was I started planning my week ahead in terms of these are the milestones I need to get through. And I would put the numbers to them to say this one is absolutely make or break. And this is 100%. Again, like when in a work environment, safety, compliance, legal, always have to be 100%, right? There's no give and take there. But on certain things, what is the outcome you're looking for? You're looking for a decision. It doesn't matter how pretty it reads. Does it put the point across?
Not the font or the size of the font.
That's
or
right.
If there's page numbers.
And karma came to really test me when I realized that after publishing the book, that I had 14 mistakes in the book. I still have 14 mistakes.
I didn't. Well, I haven't seen them.
My friends joke and they tell me that the first Harry Potter book also had a lot of mistakes, but it's still every now and again because the perfectionist in you doesn't go away. So that's a true test, and they're not big enough mistakes to impact reading. But there's a comma that should be somewhere where it's not, and so on and so forth. So you just I think any framework, and I say this towards the very end of my book. Don't hold yourself to the absolute standards. Know that you're going to drift and know that you'll probably have a week or a month or a year where you'll drift back. It's about knowing how to come back.
Yeah. And that takes me quite well onto the chapter around toxic bosses, because like you said, you know, when you expect perfectionism and everything and then you expect it from people around you, I mean, the chapter's great and we'll go into detail on it, but there's also the implication that, you know, a toxic box is not, you know, other people. It can also be yourself. Right. So what was the scenario, I guess, when you looked at your own behavior and you thought, hey, maybe, you know, I'm the problem here?
I think there's a person in my team and I was so deeply involved. They were writing a paper for the senior leadership and we had to present it and a lot counted on this paper and I was so deeply involved. So I was a new manager to them as well. And I was literally red penning everything. And I was spending 4 hours a day on calls with them, trying to explain to them how to think and how to write. And all of that was valid. And they were some of them were like, what's going on? But many of them were grateful for the feedback as well. And it was like 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I'm spending that time that I didn't have. And I'm burnt out and now I'm getting more irritable because I'm spending all this time and thinking, well, my team should have a higher standard. And then the person who was reporting directly into me, the leader of that team, came to me and he was like, can you please back off? This is not helping anybody. Let me take this. Let me bring you the final version. I know it may not be to your standards, but I'll try to be 90% there. And then if you don't like it, work around the clock to get it right. But let us be. And in that moment, I realized, God, I really need to let them be. And I am the toxic boss right now. And then there was another instance where, you know, from a very young age, I've always just done things myself. Sometimes that's faster because you'll do them to your own standard. And that becomes a case of your team is not getting the development. They're not feeling fulfilled because and they keep thinking that they'll never reach your standards. So there have been a few of these times where I have had to take a real hard look at myself and say, I need to step back, creating urgency sometimes because you're yourself stressed out or anxious about the outcomes and you unconsciously pass those emotions on to your entire team.
And it's not a nice environment to come to work, right?
That's right.
So, you know, you don't know what you're going to get. And you describe it very well and they're so on point. So you describe 5 different types of toxic bosses and I'll go through them very quickly and then ask you a question. But the emotionally dysregulated leader, the chameleon, the absent leader, the enabler and the careless leader. And I think we've, in our capacity, worked with different types of leaders. But it's a very specific taxonomy that you talk about and which you, of course, written from observation. But Which of those bosses stand out to you that you've worked with in the past that really kind of, for you as someone working for someone like that, what was that experience like?
Yeah, and actually, I had 20 different types, and I drilled it
Oh,
down to these
wow.
5 because they
Yeah.
covered maximum ground. So
Yeah.
there may be some that don't neatly fall into the full spectrum in the book. But I have been the luckiest person in the world that I have had the world's most amazing bosses.
Yeah.
And so personal observation has been very limited. I don't know how life just handpicked these people for me. And I owe so much to them. The times that I have struggled is bosses who cannot emotionally regulate themselves. And I like leaders who create an environment of psychological safety.
Yeah.
And they enable you, and then you're limitless. You're like, okay, well, I have a fallback and I can go and do whatever. When you're not scared of making a mistake, or you're not scared of repercussions of things, whether you've made a mistake or not, you can be limitless, in my opinion. And emotionally unregulated bosses take all of that away from you.
Yeah.
All bosses, we're all bosses as well. You're humans, right?
Yeah,
So it doesn't mean that you have to be psychologically perfect, but in some way you have to, it's your obligation as a people manager to do the work and be at peace with yourself.
And if someone that's listening to this right now and they have one of these bosses or just a toxic boss in general, but they can't leave and they don't know what to do, what's one practical piece of advice you would give them?
I think that there are many people like that who won't be able to leave immediately. So there are many ways of doing things, and I may sound a little entitled when I say it, but trust me, I've kind of thought through it enough, and I say it with conviction because I know that it's possible. Even in the short term, it doesn't feel like that. You have to first understand which organization you're working in, and how the boss is behaving. Does it align with the values of this organization or not? You're very lucky if you're in an organization where this behavior doesn't align, even if it has been tolerated, but it doesn't broadly align, and you trust the organization enough to raise a complaint. Or first of all, have a conversation with the boss if you can. Second, highlight it to the authorities. But in many cases, that's not possible. You know that there will be some sort of repercussion. You'll be the troublemaker, and this will not help anybody or anything. So in those cases, my biggest advice would be not to take an immediate action if you cannot financially afford, for example, to leave your job, but start planning.
Yeah.
And planning starts with a piece of paper and a pen, not in your brain. The thinking needs to happen in your brain. The planning needs to happen on a piece of paper where you set some goals. And I have a checklist that you can go through that in the book. By the way, a lot of these things are also available free of charge on the website.
Yeah.
So
We'll
people
link
can
it, yeah.
access the resources there. So you don't have to buy the book just for these. But there is a checklist of, okay, reach out to 3 contacts on LinkedIn, for example. Start the conversation. Start looking at what your options are. Talk to people around you. Networking, and in networking, we just think you go to things and you give your business card. Not that kind of networking, but genuinely getting to kind of, sometimes when you're in a busy job, you never even meet people. Starting to talk to people, understanding you don't know where the opportunity comes from. Like I was saying to you, all of my opportunities have been chance encounters. So create enough of a surface area for that chance encounter to happen. So start thinking about it. I think what would be dangerous would be to say, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm here forever, and this is my life. I think you have to get yourself to not accept that this is how things should be.
No, absolutely. Which is very, very true. And I think there's always an option, right? We always think there are options. It's just kind of looking at those options and finding those options. And as we come to a wrap on the book, was there anything that you found a bit difficult to put in the book? Because you really talk about the personal side and the personal impact it had on you. Was there anything that you almost left out?
I think it always takes some level of courage to put your personal stories in, right? So, and despite my recovery and burnout and all of that, my sort of public image at work and people who know me has always been this leader who is strong, and then your team wants to know that you're strong because they want to follow a leader who's strong, and that gives them the courage and the ability to keep going. And so putting yourself out there is always a decision. I wouldn't say it was hard. A lot of thought had to go into it, more for the sake of my team, and to make sure that they, they still have the confidence that we can lead together. But I've also learned there's nothing more powerful than sharing your own story. And the second part that was hard when I'm talking about toxic workplaces was that I personally haven't experienced all of that toxicity. So a lot of it was research, and the gold mine was talking to people. And the amount that came from those conversations to really put it all together, I think that was the bit in my book that not all of it was a lived experience.
Well, one of the things I found really interesting in your book is when you talk about, people when they have an encounter, a toxic encounter in a workplace, whether this was a boss or a colleague, is to write it down and document it, and not for like legal or HR, but just to like have their memory of events. And I found that so sad, because I was like, can it really get that bad? Because I've had a similar experience to you, where the odd, drama here or there, but it's never been to the level that, I've read in the book or I've read in research. I've never seen that in my 15 years in corporate. But can it really get that bad that people then, they start doubting, did this happen or did this not happen?
It absolutely can, and more often than you would realize.
Oh my God.
And I think the problem with toxicity of any kind, in a toxic personal relationship or in a toxic professional relationship, you would think that if there's bad treatment to somebody, you would walk away. If you were walking down the street and somebody didn't speak to you the right way, you walk the other way, right? So you would walk away from a bad situation. Why do we stay in toxic environments? Is because that bad is mixed with good. So the person will have some sort of a toxic treatment of you, and then they would love bomb you. They will shower you with love, and bosses do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I have seen this happen over and over again, where a boss could be very abusive, but then 5 minutes later come and be super nice about something. And you're like, oh, it's all right. I'll be, because you want to just feel normal and you want to get on with it. So immediately you've now forgiven all of that and you've moved on. And then it happens again. And then after a while, you're in a state of total confusion. And sometimes it's only happening to you, or your colleagues are dealing with it very differently. So you lose your anchor. And if you write it down, it's not to hold a grudge. It's just that you can reference it back to know that experiencing that level of toxicity is never okay.
And there's also another thing, is that there's also an argument that high-performing women can be disproportionately more vulnerable to toxic resilience. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So I was reading some research on this as well. And women, in many ways, biologically, are also wired differently. And from an evolutionary perspective, looking after a child requires perfectionism. If you're out being a hunter-gatherer, you don't need to be you need to strategize. You need to understand your dangers and risks, and then make sure you get what you get. But a woman cannot afford to go wrong even once with the child. So those behaviors show up in work as well, whether you have a child or not.
Yeah.
Because that's how evolutionary you've been brought up, that you want everything to be right. And that's your evolutionary responsibility as a woman, if you are a mother, but overall for the gender as well. And so women would be at a higher risk. I actually really don't know the full statistics around it, but I would assume that women are at a higher risk of burnout.
Well, I mean, there was a Gallup poll that ran in the UK between 2022 and 2025, and it reported that women in leadership are burning out nearly 30% versus 19% of men, which I found incredible. Like, I wasn't surprised, but that's a really big gap in nowadays. Like, if someone told me that when I first started corporate, I'd be like, yeah, okay, 10, 15 years ago. But now I feel like, especially, like, things are changing, but not enough.
Yeah, and also, like, as a woman, I will tell you that I had to work a lot harder than the men to just get a seat at the table. One day I realized that I need to be super knowledgeable, so they have no choice but to listen to me.
Yes.
So I had to 2 or 3x my output and my knowledge just to get to the same level as men. So you've got that element. You've got that element of perfectionism, which inherently is a bit higher in women. And then you also, in many cases, have responsibilities at home. So we're also, no matter what we say, we're not living in the world where responsibilities are perfectly divided. Everybody, right?
Yeah.
In some lucky cases, they are, but you've got a ton of that responsibility. And I have so much respect for working mothers as well. I don't know if I'd be able to juggle it if I had to. So I think all of it brought together, then the numbers make sense.
Have you seen a change in your time, say in the last 5 years of this, like burnout, men versus women, or even like your experiences being a senior female leader in rooms that necessarily don't represent you as such? Have you seen that like change, or do you think there's still a while to go?
I think we have such a long way to go on any kind of gender equality that any change, even if in the moment it feels big, is just a marginal change. I think we've not moved it in any meaningful way.
It's wonderful to see people like you in that room, because it's, like they say, you can't be what you can't see. So, a lot of young women watching you, especially from a South Asian background, they're like, wow, like there's someone there that represents them. So that's incredible. But I guess wrapping up now, you wrote the book, you're still in corporate. So, you left Amazon, you've joined DoorDash now. But what does rest actually feel like for you now, post this journey?
Being present. And it's still a high bar, because you would think you can do some sort of meditation and maybe just be present in the moment like that. But being present for me is rest, because that's my best time of awareness. You have to be aware of life. You have to be aware of the present moment. Like they say, that's all that you have. And so I'm learning this skill to be present. And there are moments of presence throughout the day. I could be working. I could be at work, at home, doing anything at all. But those flashes of being present, I want to sort of put them in a jar and save them somehow. But more and more of that is rest for me, because those are the moments when my best thinking happens. Those are the moments where my best self-awareness happens as well. And that's when my brain gets to kind of, I have to be in a mentally relaxed state to be present. So that's kind of a signal.
And then last question before we go into the rapid fire. If there's a Zertashia who was in hospital could see you now, what do you think she would say?
She would be very surprised.
Yeah.
She would be very surprised. I think she would not be too surprised, because both the Zertashias are totally logical, like a sucker for logic. And if the logic is given, then it's easy to change my mind. But should be surprised. That's for sure.
Okay, now we're going to go into rapid fire.
I didn't know there was a rapid fire.
All right, are you ready?
Go
first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
All right. Chai or iron brew?
Chai.
Biryani or Scottish Sunday roast?
Biryani, God.
Pakora or deep fried Mars bar?
Oh my God. Pakora.
Oh my, I would go for the deep fried Mars bar.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Show you've been watching but you'd never admit publicly.
At Dubai Bling.
I love Dubai.
I watched the first season. I couldn't do anymore, but I did love it.
Oh my God, I really do like it. One habit you've built in the last 6 months that's actually stuck?
Eating more protein.
Oh, I just feel like I'm just bombarded with protein, and now it's fiber, and I don't know what to eat. You don't know what to eat. I'm like, I thought protein was important, and now they're saying you need fiber. That's the best advice you've ever received.
I think the best advice would be that great things never come from comfort zones.
And what would you tell someone who suspects they're burning out but they're not sure?
I would give them some of the frameworks in the book, but I would tell them to anchor to looking after yourself, because you're a limited resource.
Absolutely. And what's still on your not doing list?
My not doing list. Not to get burnt out, I think that's a good one, but to really be more in touch with my loved ones.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Zertashia. That's the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be here, Anna.
Thank you so much for listening and watching today. If Zertashia's story resonated with you and you found value in it, please do subscribe and share. It really does help make a difference and helps us bring more guests with stories as powerful and as honest as hers. We'll see you on the next one. And one more thing. Thank you to S.I.G.N.S for sponsoring today's episode. If you missed it earlier, check them out at www.onenlabs.com. For adults only, nicotine is a highly addictive substance.